Some doors in life don't need locks. They close themselves, sealed by years of cold shoulders and silent exclusions. That day, California was glowing in golden sunshine as Emma drove down the tree-lined road toward her brother's lavish home. Her heart was a storm, half dread, half fragile hope. In the back seat sat a baby blue gift box tied with a silver ribbon, a peace offering for a nephew she had never met. Beside her, 19-year-old Lily stared ahead with the calmness of someone who already knew what was coming. "You don't need their permission to show up," Mom Lily said softly. "But if they try to hurt you again this time, I won't stay quiet." Emma squeezed her daughter's hand. She wasn't afraid of getting hurt. What she feared was that pain had become so familiar it almost felt like home. The child who was never enough. Even as a little girl, Emma learned a painful truth: love in her family came with strings attached. Her mother, Margaret, was the very image of discipline, order, and expectations that never rested on Emma's shoulders, but were instead heaped onto her younger brother, Ethan, the golden boy of the Monroe family. Emma still remembered the day she won an honorable mention at the school science fair. Margaret barely smiled before changing the subject. But when Ethan placed third in a regional competition, balloons, banners, and a full-blown party, every family photo on the wall featured Ethan in suits, graduation gowns, award ceremonies. Emma's photos, the few there were tucked behind fake flowers or propped against books no one read. "Emma, why can't you be more like your brother?" Margaret would say, often not realizing that sentence was a life sentence. Emma would always be the one not quite enough. A mistake with a heartbeat life shifted permanently the day Emma turned 17. It was a late afternoon when 2 pink lines appeared on a pregnancy test like a lightning strike through her plans. Her boyfriend Rick vanished with a text. "I'm sorry. I can't do this." Emma, terrified and trembling, confessed to her mother. But instead of an embrace, Margaret stood frozen, then hissed, "Do you realize what this will do to our family name?" She didn't ask how Emma felt. She didn't ask what she needed. She just made a call, scheduled an appointment at a clinic, and left the paperwork on the table the next morning. Ethan, then a high school junior, couldn't even look her in the eye, as if her condition might be contagious. But something unexpected happened. The daughter, who had always been deemed too soft, finally stood up for herself. "I'm keeping the baby," Emma declared during dinner one night, her voice shaking but firm. Margaret didn't scream or cry. She calmly set her fork down, wiped her mouth with a napkin, and replied, "Then don't expect any help from me." Lily, the light in the darkness. Lily came into the world in a 1-bedroom apartment behind a supermarket, into the arms of a mother who hadn't even finished high school. She was born between silence and side eyes, but Emma never once regretted her decision. She juggled night shifts as a waitress, daytime GED classes, and newborn feedings. She brought Lily to work in a portable crib during slow hours. While Ethan waltzed into college with a scholarship and cheers, Emma was learning how to parent with no playbook, only instinct and fierce love. Lily didn't grow up with grandparents who took her to the zoo. She didn't have aunts and uncles at her birthday parties. But she had a mother who never gave up, even when the world whispered she ruined her life. Erased from every milestone years later, Emma built a modest but steady career at a small media firm. She climbed the ladder with grit, eventually becoming a manager. From time to time, she sent cards to her mother, called Ethan on his birthday, reached out hoping to rebuild something, anything. But when Ethan got married, she wasn't asked to be a bridesmaid. Margaret, however, helped plan the whole wedding, from embroidered napkins to the 5-tier cake. When Ethan and his wife announced they were expecting a baby, Emma texted her congratulations, heartfelt and sincere. Ethan replied with a short thanks. His wife said nothing. The door that was never open. A few weeks later, Emma saw photos online, Margaret and Ethan at a gender reveal party, smiling in a cloud of blue powder. Dozens of guests, neighbors, childhood friends, family, everyone except Emma and Lily. "Did you get invited to the party?" Emma asked her daughter that night. Lily didn't even look up from her textbook. "No, but Grandma tagged the entire neighborhood. Just not us." Emma tried calling Ethan. "Looked like a fun party," she said lightly. "Oh yeah, it was super last minute," he mumbled. In the background of those photos, at least 30 people. That night, Emma realized the truth she had avoided for years. The door wasn't just shut. It was never meant for her in the first place. But this time, Lily wasn't going to let her mother suffer in silence. "There's a particular kind of strength forged in silence when no one claps for you, no one notices you, and yet you keep going." That was Emma's life. She didn't have applause, but she had purpose. After Lily was born, Emma became a master of multitasking. Mornings were for online GED courses. Afternoons meant juggling a part-time receptionist job at a crumbling marketing agency with diaper changes and lullabies. At night, when the world slept, she worked the register at a diner off Highway 6, where the manager let her stash Lily in a portable crib during slow shifts. No one clapped, no one posted photos, no one said, "I'm proud of you." But every time Lily smiled, every time she clung to Emma's finger like the world depended on it, she knew that was her standing ovation, not a story worth telling. Ethan's life was a highlight reel. Full scholarship, prestigious internships, a wedding with crystal chandeliers, and a string quartet. He had Margaret's unwavering support every step of the way. Her voice, once sharp and judgmental with Emma, was soft and doting when talking to Ethan. "He's making something of himself," she'd boast. "He's putting the family name on the map." Meanwhile, Emma was getting by. Her job at the marketing firm wasn't glamorous, but it was stable. And eventually, after years of grinding, she was promoted to senior account manager. A real office, a raise, her name on the door. She told Margaret during one of their rare monthly calls. There was a pause on the line. "Oh," her mother said, "that's nice." "Not congratulations, not you did it, just that's nice." Emma smiled bitterly. If I'd gotten fired, she might have had more to say. The child who saw too much Lily, now a perceptive teenager, saw through the cracks early. "Grandma loves you," Emma would say after yet another strained holiday visit, trying to make peace between generations. "She loves Uncle Ethan more," Lily once replied at age 7. "And that's not fair." Emma froze. How do you explain to a child that sometimes the people who are supposed to protect you just don't? But Lily never needed explanations. She was smart, observant, and fiercely loyal. "You've been doing this on your own for years, Mom," she said one day while helping Emma assemble a new desk for her office. "You don't need them to clap for you. You've already won." Emma smiled through the sting in her throat. She didn't know whether to be proud or heartbroken by how early Lily had to grow up. The pregnancy that rewrote the family tree. 8 years into Ethan's marriage, the golden boy and his perfectly poised wife Claire announced they were expecting. Margaret was overjoyed. Her excitement didn't stop at words. She painted clouds on nursery walls, bought handcrafted furniture, and dedicated an entire guest room to baby Monroe. On every family call, every social media post, every holiday card, there it was, my first grandson. Emma didn't expect to be the center of attention. She didn't need gifts or praise, but she did hope just once to be included. So she reached out. A thoughtful message to Ethan and Claire. "Congratulations. If there's anything you need, I'd love to help." Ethan replied with a cold thanks. Claire silence. Still Emma persisted. She dropped off baby clothes, left books on parenting at the doorstep. She stayed hopeful until she stumbled upon the truth. The party that broke her. It started with a scroll through social media, a photo of Margaret and Ethan beaming in a swirl of blue confetti. The caption, celebrating baby Jackson, our joy, our light, our legacy. Emma blinked. There had been no invitation, no call, no mention. She turned to Lily. "Did you know there was a gender reveal?" Lily looked up from her laptop, her pre-law textbooks open like a shield. Yeah, Grandma tagged everyone, except us. Emma stared at the screen. In the background of the photo stood dozens of guests, family, friends, even neighbors Emma hadn't seen since high school. She picked up the phone and called Ethan. Looked like a fun party, she said, trying to keep her voice light. Yeah, last-minute thing, he muttered. Last minute there were catered trays, a customized cake, coordinated outfits. It wasn't just an oversight. It was an erasure. And Emma felt it in her bones. This wasn't new. This was the final stitch in a tapestry of exclusion that had been woven since the day she kept her baby against all odds. The spark in Lily's eyes. That night, Emma sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the ceiling. I just don't understand, she whispered. Lily sat beside her, silent for a long moment. Then I do. Emma turned. They're treating you like you don't matter, and you keep letting them. They're family, Emma replied weakly. Being family doesn't give them the right to hurt you. Her daughter's voice, firm, steady, hit her harder than any rejection. It wasn't just the party, it was the pattern. And for the first time in a long time, Emma began to question the story she'd been telling herself, that maybe if she were just a little more patient, they'd finally let her in. But sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is stop knocking on a door that was never meant to open. There are silences that soothe, and then there are silences that scream the truth louder than any confrontation ever could. Emma stood on the porch of her mother's house holding a stack of old photo albums. Margaret had asked her to drop them off, something about putting together a baby scrapbook for Claire and Ethan. I won't be home, she had said. Just leave them by the door. But Margaret's silver Lexus was parked in the driveway, gleaming in the sun, and the front door slightly ajar. Emma hesitated. She knew what walking through that door meant, the chance to see, to hear, to know what she was never meant to. She stepped inside. Words not meant for her ears. Voices drifted from the dining room. Margaret, animated in a way Emma hadn't heard in years, was chatting with another woman, Claire's mother, if Emma remembered correctly. The invitations turned out beautiful, Margaret beamed. I've always said cream and gold is timeless. Claire's taste is simply exquisite. Emma's pulse quickened. Invitations for what? She rounded the corner and froze. The table was covered in ivory envelopes, each written in flawless calligraphy. Names she recognized: Aunt Denise, Cousin Ryan, family friends, old neighbors. No envelope bore her name. Emma Margaret gasped, clutching her chest. You weren't supposed to be here yet. You said 11, Emma replied, checking her watch. It's 11:15. The air thickened. Claire's mother gave a polite but tight-lipped smile. Margaret stood between Emma and the table as if shielding secrets. We're hosting a welcome shower for the baby, Claire's mother finally said. Since Claire's on bed rest, we decided a post-birth party would be more appropriate. Emma nodded slowly, eyes scanning the elegant arrangements. That sounds lovely, she said, voice even. I'll just leave the albums here. Margaret practically snatched the albums, ushering Emma toward the door with a rehearsed smile. I'll make sure these are scanned and returned. Dismissed, efficiently, coldly. Back in her car, Emma sat motionless. She hadn't been excluded by accident. She'd been managed like a liability. The final straw back home. Emma tried to act normal. She put on a load of laundry, scrolled through emails, stirred a pot of soup without appetite. But Lily, ever perceptive, saw the truth etched on her mother's face. What happened? Emma told her. The envelopes. The seating chart that never included them. The way Margaret had orchestrated it all like a wedding planner, hiding the shameful relative. That's it, Lily said, her voice low, razor sharp. This isn't just rude anymore. This is systematic. Emma exhaled shakily. I'm tired, Lil. So tired. I know, Lily said gently. That's why I've been working on something. Emma blinked. What do you mean? But Lily only smiled, calm and cryptic, and retreated to her room, books in hand. The hidden thread unravels. Over the next week, Emma noticed Lily acting different. Phone calls made in hushed tones. Quick texts she didn't explain. Hours spent in the university library beyond what any research paper could justify. When Emma asked, Lily simply said, "Big project?" She wasn't lying. Just not about school. A party built on secrets 5 days before Claire's scheduled C-section, Emma saw it. A post on her cousin's Instagram, so excited for baby Jackson's big welcome party this Saturday. A post-birth celebration, planned well in advance. Emma stared at the screen, feeling the last thread of hope unravel in her hands. The pattern was now too clear, too cruel her name wasn't forgotten. It had been deliberately left off the guest list. Again, that night she wept not with rage, but with something deeper. A mourning for years she'd spent chasing validation from a family who had decided she didn't belong. She wasn't crying over a missed party. She was grieving an entire lifetime of almosts, the blueprint for change. The morning of the party arrived with unnerving perfection. Sunshine, blue skies, flowers blooming along the sidewalk like nature had RSVP'd to a celebration Emma wasn't invited to. She dressed simply. The gift box sat on the kitchen table wrapped in blue tied with trembling hope. Inside was a personalized baby blanket hand-embroidered with the baby's name and birth date. It had cost nearly half her paycheck, but Emma needed to make that gesture, to show she could still give without being asked, without being included. As she prepared to leave, Lily emerged in pressed slacks and a blouse that made her look 10 years older. Gone were the sneakers and messy bun. In their place stood someone with intent. "You look serious," Emma noted. "I'm coming with you," Lily said. "No debate, just decision. It's going to be awkward, sweetheart. You don't have to. That's exactly why I'm going." She poured herself coffee with the quiet authority of someone who knew more than she was letting on. The mysterious guest, just as they were about to leave, Lily checked her phone and smiled. "Just a minute, someone's meeting us outside." Before Emma could ask, the doorbell rang. Through the window, she saw a middle-aged man in a crisp suit holding a leather portfolio. His presence didn't match any friend or classmate she'd ever known. "Mom, this is Mr. Chen," Lily said. "He'll be following us to the party." Emma blinked. What? Mr. Chen extended his hand with a firm, professional shake. "Emma, it's a pleasure. Your daughter speaks very highly of you." Emma's confusion deepened. "Lily, who is this man?" Lily's gaze was calm, steady. "He's Grandpa James' lawyer." Emma's world tilted. "Grandpa James has been gone for 3 years. Lily nodded. "And apparently, Grandma didn't tell you everything about what he left behind." Emma's heart raced. For 19 years, she had believed she was the family's failure, the stain they quietly covered with polite smiles. But her daughter had found a loose thread and was about to pull. "Some truths don't explode," they whisper softly, steadily, until the silence becomes impossible to ignore. As Emma drove toward her brother's home, Mr. Chen's sleek black sedan followed closely behind like a shadow with purpose. The box on her lap, wrapped in soft blue paper, felt heavier than it should. It wasn't just a gift. It was the last offering of someone still hoping to be seen. "Lily," Emma finally asked, eyes flicking to the rearview mirror, "what exactly did you and Grandpa's lawyer talk about?" Her daughter didn't look away from the window. "I'll let him explain. But today, Mom, we're not here to beg. We're here to stand in truth. A street lined with familiar faces, just not yours." The closer they got, the more crowded the neighborhood became. Cars lined both sides of the road. Laughter and music spilled through open windows. From a distance, it could have been mistaken for a wedding reception. "Look at all these people," Emma murmured. "Everyone we know is here." "Everyone except us," Lily added softly. They parked 2 blocks away. The walk was long, not because of distance, but because of memory. With every step toward the house, Emma felt the years pile on the times she'd been left out, talked over, judged behind her back. Behind her, Mr. Chen walked calmly, portfolio in hand. The party no one expected her to attend. When they reached the front steps, Emma hesitated. From inside came the clinking of glasses, the hum of voices, the occasional burst of laughter. It was a party, just not hers. She took a shaky breath and rang the bell. The door swung open, and there stood her cousin Naomi mid-smile, which froze the moment she saw who it was. "Emma, Lily, I didn't know you were coming." "We're just dropping off a gift," Emma said, her voice measured. "We won't stay." Naomi stepped aside awkwardly, and they entered a house bursting with people and warmth that had no place for them. The laughter dimmed as eyes turned. Conversations died mid-sentence. Claire, radiant in soft pastels, cradled her newborn on the sofa. Ethan stood nearby, drink in hand, talking to Claire's father. Margaret emerged from the kitchen holding a tray of mini quiches. When her eyes met Emma's, she paled. "Emma," she said, voice sharp with warning, "you shouldn't be here." A room full of witnesses. The words hung in the air like smoke after a firecracker. Emma opened her mouth, ready to apologize, to retreat. But Lily stepped forward, unwavering. "You're right, Grandma. Maybe we shouldn't be here." The room turned toward her, curious, unsure. "That's why I brought a lawyer." Silence. Complete, undeniable silence. Mr. Chen stepped forward, calm as morning fog. "Good afternoon," he began. "My name is Daniel Chen. I represent the estate of Mr. James Monroe, Emma's late father." Margaret stiffened. "Why are you here?" Ethan demanded, his voice shaking slightly. "Because," Mr. Chen replied smoothly, "there are unresolved legal matters regarding the Monroe estate, specifically the ownership of the house at 45 Willow Lane." A gasp rippled through the crowd. That address was Margaret's home, the same house Emma grew up in, the one her mother had continued to live in without discussion. That house, Mr. Chen continued, opening his folder, was legally willed to Emma Monroe following her father's passing. The legacy buried for years. "I don't understand," Ethan said. "Mom's lived there for decades." "Yes," Mr. Chen nodded. "Under temporary residency granted in the divorce. But when Mr. Monroe's mother passed 12 years ago, full ownership transferred to him. And upon his passing, his will clearly states the house goes to his daughter." Emma stood frozen. The world tilted. The house wasn't Margaret's. It was hers. All this time, while her mother spoke of sacrifice painted herself, the victim claimed there was nothing to inherit. She had been living in Emma's home, collecting rental income from the basement apartment, using those funds to support Ethan and Claire. Margaret's voice cut through the tension, sharp and trembling. "This is outrageous. That property is mine." "No, Mrs. Monroe," Mr. Chen said evenly. "It never was." The cost of manipulation. Claire's mother stepped forward, confused and annoyed. "I don't understand what this has to do with today." "It has everything to do with today," Lily said, stepping forward again. Her voice calm but firm as stone. "The party, the nursery, the trust fund for baby Jackson, all of it came from money that legally belongs to my mother." Claire looked at Margaret, stunned. "Is this true? You said Emma didn't want to be involved, that she was bitter." Margaret said nothing. "I sent gifts," Emma said quietly. "I texted. I reached out. I was never invited to anything." Ethan turned toward their mother, his voice barely a whisper. "You told us she didn't care, that she refused." In that moment, the real betrayal wasn't just legal. It was personal. A daughter's reckoning. "You've been lying to them for years," Lily said, her voice breaking. "You made everyone believe my mom was a disgrace, that I was a mistake, that we didn't belong." Margaret's face hardened. "She defied me. She kept the baby. She ruined everything." "No," Emma whispered, her voice shaking but steady. "I chose love. You chose shame." The room was still. Even the baby had gone quiet. Mr. Chen cleared his throat. "There's a time and place for legal matters," he said gently. "Perhaps we should schedule a meeting outside this celebration." Ethan nodded, stunned. "Yes, please." Emma stepped forward and gently placed the gift on the table. "I just wanted to welcome my nephew," she said softly. And then she turned and walked out. Outside, the air hit her like a wave. It wasn't over, but for the first time in her life, she had been heard. They say the past never truly disappears. It simply waits quietly for the day you're ready to face it. Emma hadn't expected to spend the afternoon crying in her car, but there she was parked 2 blocks from the house where her family had just imploded in slow motion, her hands trembling on the steering wheel. Mr. Chen had followed them back discreetly, offering a few parting words and a promise to set up a formal meeting. Then he left Emma and Lily alone with the raw aftermath of a truth finally exposed. Emma didn't speak. She didn't have to. Her tears did all the talking. The truth hurts, but lies hurt more. Lily sat in the passenger seat, silent but solid. She didn't reach for tissues. She didn't rush her mother. She just waited. And when Emma finally caught her breath, she turned to her daughter and asked the only question that mattered. "How long have you known?" Lily hesitated. "About 3 months." Emma blinked. "I was looking through your storage boxes," Lily explained, "for my birth certificate, and I found a folder. It had Grandpa's will and a letter." Emma's chest tightened. "A letter?" Lily nodded. "It was addressed to you. He wrote it before he died. A father's last attempt back home." Emma sat at the kitchen table as Lily retrieved the yellowed envelope from her backpack. It was worn, the corners frayed with time, but her name, Emma Monroe, was written in her father's careful script. She opened it with trembling fingers. "My dearest Emma, I know this letter may never reach you, and if it does, it's probably too late for me to say the words I should have said years ago. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't the father you needed. I'm sorry I let Margaret's bitterness drive me away. I should have fought harder for time with you. I should have seen the damage before it was too late. I left you the house not because it's valuable, but because I owed you safety, stability, something that says you mattered. Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise. You were never a mistake. You were the best part of me. Love always, Dad." Emma didn't cry, not at first. She just stared at the words, reading them over and over until they blurred. Then it came, not just tears, but grief she hadn't allowed herself to feel for years. Not when he left, not at the funeral, not when Margaret said flatly, "There's nothing to inherit." Now she knew why. A pattern. So carefully woven. Lily explained the rest. "She never gave you the letter," she said. "And when Grandpa's lawyer couldn't reach you, Grandma told him you wanted nothing to do with the estate." Emma's hands curled into fists. "She cut me off. Not just from the house, but from closure. From Dad. It was never just about the property," Lily said. "It was about control. She needed to be the center. And you were the threat." Emma exhaled, slow and shaky. "She stole my story. For years I believed I didn't belong, that maybe I deserved it. And all along, it was her." "You still have the ending," Lily said, "and now you get to write it. A new kind of strength." The next morning, Emma met with Mr. Chen in his office. It was bright, clinical, full of legal documents and calm professionalism. He explained the legal implications of what they'd uncovered. The house legally belonged to Emma. Margaret had been collecting rental income illegally. Emma was entitled not only to back payments, but full control over the property. She had the right to evict her mother. Emma sat in silence, letting the weight of it settle. "Do you want to pursue restitution?" Mr. Chen asked gently. Emma stared at the papers, then shook her head. "I want boundaries, not revenge. Drawing the line without a sword." That evening, Margaret called. Her voice was flat, polished. No apologies, only one question. "When do you want to meet?" They met in Mr. Chen's office. Emma arrived in a blazer and slacks, not for style, but armor. Lily sat beside her, proud and silent. Margaret walked in with her usual poise, pearl earrings, designer handbag. The same dignity she'd always weaponized to stay in control. "This is ridiculous," she began. "You want to kick your own mother out." Emma didn't flinch. "No," she said. "I want a lease." Margaret blinked. "Excuse me. You can stay, but legally, with rent." just like anyone else. Mr. Chen slid a standard lease across the table, and Emma added, "You're going to tell Ethan and Claire the truth. No more lies. No more Emma chose to be distant. No more painting me as bitter." Margaret's lips curled. "You want me to humiliate myself?" "I want you to tell the truth," Emma replied. "That's not humiliation. That's accountability." Not the ending, but a new beginning. The meeting ended with no shouting, no tears, just silence. Margaret left without signing the lease, but Emma knew the power had shifted. Later that night, her phone buzzed. It was Ethan. "We need to talk. I'm sorry. It wasn't everything, but it was a start." There's a silence heavier than anger. It's the kind that fills a room when someone finally realizes they've been living in a story written by someone else, one where the villain wasn't the person they thought. Ethan stood in Emma's living room holding a coffee mug like it was the only solid thing keeping him grounded. He hadn't been there in over a decade. Everything about the apartment was unfamiliar to him, yet strangely honest. Lived in. Real. He looked around, then down at the floor, unable to meet Emma's eyes. "I always thought you were distant." "Disinterested," he began. "Mom said you didn't want to be involved, that you were embarrassed about the family, about me, about the baby." Emma didn't respond right away. She simply walked to the kitchen, poured herself a cup, and took the seat across from him. "I wasn't embarrassed," she said quietly. "I was erased." Confessions brewed with bitter coffee. Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I texted you during Claire's pregnancy. You replied with just, 'Thanks.' I figured that confirmed what Mom was saying." Emma gave a small, tired laugh. "Do you know how hard it was for me to write that message? How long I stared at it? I didn't want to say the wrong thing. I wanted to say too much. But I was afraid it wouldn't matter." She looked him in the eye. "I sent gifts. I asked how Claire was feeling. I offered help. No one ever answered." Ethan's face crumpled. "She told Claire you were jealous, that you resented us for having what you didn't." Emma felt a pang in her chest, not because the accusation was new, but because it had been so easily believed. "I didn't resent you," she said. "I just wanted to be included." The weight of realization. For the first time in years, Ethan didn't defend their mother. He just nodded, slowly, painfully. "She's been doing this for years, hasn't she?" he murmured. "Twisting things, keeping us apart." Emma didn't have to answer. The silence between them said enough. "I was the golden child," he continued, bitterness creeping into his tone. "And I never questioned it. I thought you just didn't care. But it turns out you were the one surviving." Emma watched him closely. "Are you ready to question it now?" He looked up. "Yes." A proper introduction. Later that week, Claire invited Emma and Lily over for real this time. No pretending, no formalities, just a bridge being built. Emma hesitated at the door, gift bag in hand, when the door opened and Claire greeted her with a soft smile. "Come in," she said. "We owe you a proper welcome." Emma stepped inside. The home was warm, clean, with gentle lullaby music playing in the background. On the sofa was the baby Jackson, barely 2 months old, wrapped in a pale blue onesie with tiny bears. "He's beautiful," Emma whispered. Claire handed her the baby, and just like that, Emma held her nephew for the first time. The hug that healed something. Jackson squirmed in her arms for a moment, then settled his tiny hand wrapping around her finger. It was so small, so fragile, and yet it felt like the most powerful gesture in the world. Claire watched her closely. "Margaret told us you declined the invitations, that you were too busy with work, that you wanted nothing to do with him." Emma looked down at the baby and said, "I've wanted to hold him since the moment I knew he existed." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry." Emma looked up, surprised by the sincerity. "I believed her," Claire continued. "I judged you without ever asking for your side. And now I realize I've been helping her keep you out." Emma didn't say it's okay, because it wasn't. But she said thank you for saying that. Starting again. Not from scratch, but from truth. From that day on, the relationship began to shift. Ethan started calling not just for family updates, but for advice. "Jackson won't sleep," he once texted. "Is this normal?" Emma smiled at the message and replied with 3 voice notes of tips. That night he called her back just to say, "It worked." "Thank you." She was no longer just the older sister. She was his sister and Jackson's aunt. At the next family gathering, a small birthday dinner for Claire, Emma was there. So was Lily. There were no whispered judgments, no passive-aggressive glares, just a high chair with Cheerios, a tiny hand grabbing at Emma's scarf, and laughter. Real laughter. A family rewritten one night as Emma babysat Jackson so Ethan and Claire could have a date night. Lily sat on the floor with her textbook spread around her. "You know," Lily said, "this is what I pictured growing up. Not the house or the parties, just this. Normal. Warm." Emma gently rocked Jackson, watching his lashes flutter. "I didn't think I'd ever get here," she admitted. "I thought I'd always be outside." Lily smiled. "Funny thing about being outside, sometimes it gives you the clearest view. Some walls aren't built with bricks. They're built with pride, silence, and decades of denial." Emma stood in front of the same door she'd once left in tears. The house on Willow Lane. Her childhood home was still immaculately kept, flowers trimmed, the porch swept, clean wind chimes humming in the breeze. It looked unchanged, but everything inside had shifted. She wasn't here as a daughter begging for approval anymore. She was here as the rightful owner, the lease on the table. Inside the air was thick, not with warmth, but with control. Margaret sat at the dining table, back straight, blouse, crisp pearls around her neck like armor. She didn't rise when Emma entered, didn't offer tea, just motioned to the chair across from her. "I received the lease," Margaret said flatly. "Very formal?" "That's the point," Emma replied. "Formality sets boundaries." Margaret's lips tightened. "So this is where we've come. You're charging me rent to live in the home I built." Emma met her eyes unflinching. "It's the home Dad gave me. And yes, because boundaries are how broken families stop breaking further." Mr. Chen, seated quietly in the corner, slid the lease across the table. One copy for Margaret, one for Emma, both already notarized, just waiting on a signature. Margaret picked up the pen and paused. A last attempt at control. "You know this will humiliate me," she said. "I've been the matriarch of this family for over 2 decades, and now I'll be a tenant." Emma's voice didn't waver. "You'll be respected, like any adult with accountability." Margaret scoffed. "You've always been dramatic." "I've always been silenced," Emma countered. There was a flicker of something in Margaret's eyes, discomfort perhaps, or realization. But it vanished quickly. "And what about your second demand?" Margaret asked. "The truth-telling tour. You expect me to call everyone and confess." "I expect honesty," Emma said. "Ethan, Claire, the family. They deserve to know I didn't walk away. You pushed me out and kept pushing." "What the truth costs and heals," Margaret stared at the lease. "Your father loved you, you know," she said suddenly. The words were quiet, almost fragile. "He left you the house." Margaret nodded, not looking up. "He knew I wouldn't give it to you, so he went around me." Emma wasn't prepared for the crack in her mother's voice. Not quite remorse, but something raw. "I was angry," Margaret whispered. "At him, at you, at the whole world." Emma softened slightly, "And I paid the price for all of it." Margaret didn't deny it. "Signed with resistance." She picked up the pen and signed. The scratch of ink on paper sounded like thunder. Mr. Chen collected the documents, nodding in approval. "You'll receive a copy shortly," he said politely. Emma stood, collected her bag, and prepared to leave. At the door, Margaret spoke again. "You've made your point, Emma. You've won." Emma turned back. This was never about winning. It was about being seen, and finally being heard. After the ink, the echoes outside. Emma exhaled. The sun hit her skin like a blessing. She called Lily from the car. "It's done." "And?" She signed. There was a pause. "How do you feel?" Lily asked. Emma thought for a long moment. "Free. Not happy, not sad, just free. Truth in the open bit by bit. The next week word got out. Emma didn't post anything. She didn't need to. But Ethan did. He called Aunt Denise, spoke to Cousin Ryan. He told them about the will, the years of manipulation, the false narratives. Some relatives expressed shock. Others offered quiet apologies. Naomi sent a message, "I'm sorry for what happened at the party. I didn't know the full story." Even Claire's mother reached out inviting Emma and Lily to a family portrait session. "All families should be included," she wrote, pointedly. And Margaret, she kept her distance. Paid rent on time. Never mentioned the lease again. But at Thanksgiving, she arrived late. Store-bought pie in hand. Stiff smile. No apology. Just presence. It wasn't much, but it was a start. The power of a line in the sand. Emma didn't expect her mother to change overnight. Maybe not ever. But she had done something more important. She had taken back her voice. She no longer needed to argue her worth or beg for a seat at the table. She had her own table now, and those who wanted to sit with her had to come in truth. Some legacies are inherited through wealth, others through wounds turned into wisdom. 6 months after the confrontation at the party, Emma's apartment was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the gentle coo of a 6-month-old baby boy. Thanksgiving dinner had never looked like this before, not in her home, not on her terms. Ethan and Claire sat at the end of the table, their son Jackson in a high chair, cheerfully flinging mashed potatoes. Aunt Denise poured wine for Cousin Ryan. Even Claire's mother, always a little aloof, passed a dish of roasted carrots to Lily with a nod of genuine warmth. And then just as dessert arrived, the door opened quietly. Margaret stepped in. No entrance speech, no grand gestures. Just her and a store-bought pumpkin pie held like a peace offering she didn't yet know how to give. A seat at the table. Finally, Emma motioned toward an empty chair. Margaret sat down stiffly, adjusting her napkin but saying nothing. There was no apology, but there was presence. And sometimes that's the first sign of a bridge beginning to form. Ethan raised his glass. "To family," he said, voice steady. "Real family. Built on truth and respect." Everyone raised their glasses, even Margaret. Emma noticed the slight tremble in her mother's hand. Small steps, but steps nonetheless. What the house became. Since the lease was signed, the income from the basement unit had changed Emma's life. She'd opened a separate account, one that no one else had access to, and earmarked it for something sacred. Law school, Lily had asked, eyes wide, when Emma told her. "I want you to graduate debt-free," Emma said. "It's what your grandfather wanted. He just didn't live long enough to do it himself." Lily blinked back tears. "Are you sure?" Emma smiled. "I'm investing in justice, and you're my best shot at that." The real reason. It was a quiet night when Lily finally said it. They were cleaning up after Sunday dinner, one of their new rituals. A neutral restaurant halfway between their apartment and Ethan's house, where extended family now gathered twice a month. Even Margaret showed up on alternating weeks, still guarded but quieter than she'd ever been. As Emma dried a dish, Lily stood beside her, staring at the steam rising from the sink. "Do you know why I chose law?" she asked softly. Emma glanced over. "Because you've always had a sense of justice." Lily shook her head. "That's part of it. But mostly, it's because I watched you." Emma set the plate down. "You never had anyone advocate for you," Lily continued. "Not when you got pregnant. Not when Grandma rewrote your story. You were alone for so long." She paused. "I wanted to be someone who could change that for you. For people like you. For anyone who's been erased and didn't know how to fight back." Emma didn't speak. She couldn't. There were no words big enough for what she felt in that moment. "The gift in the wound," Lily went on. "I realized something in one of my ethics classes. The professor said, your passion often hides inside your pain. And it hit me what I went through with our family. It wasn't just trauma. It was direction." Emma finally found her voice. "That's one hell of a compass." They laughed and cried and laughed again. Because that's what healing sounds like sometimes. New traditions, new truths. They created new rituals. Jackson came over once a week to destroy the living room as Ethan joked. Claire baked. Lily helped baby-proof the apartment. Emma rediscovered joy not forced or formal, but rooted in mutual effort. And Margaret, she still clung to her quiet dignity. But something had shifted. One Sunday, as Emma gently rocked Jackson by the window, Margaret watched from across the room. "You've always been good with babies," she said softly. Emma looked up surprised. "Thanks," she replied. "I had a good teacher." Margaret didn't ask who. She didn't have to. Breaking the cycle. Brick by brick. On Lily's 20th birthday, they hosted a small celebration. Friends, family. Jackson giggling in his high chair. Margaret even brought a homemade cake store-bought frosting, but effort nonetheless. As the candles were lit, Emma looked around. This wasn't just healing. This was redefining. For years, Emma believed she had to accept whatever family gave her, even if it meant crumbs of affection wrapped in control. Now, she chose who sat at her table. She chose truth over tradition. And in doing so, she had broken a generational cycle. The real inheritance. The house wasn't the real gift her father had left. It was the knowing, the knowledge that she had always been worthy. That silence doesn't mean weakness. That being left out doesn't mean you were ever the problem. That the story others write about you can be rewritten. And sometimes the ones you raise end up finishing the story better than you ever imagined. Final line. Emma once thought survival was the best she could hope for. Now watching her daughter advocate, grow, and lead, she realized she hadn't just survived. She'd built a legacy. Family stories aren't written in one day. They're rewritten one uncomfortable conversation, one shaky truce, one choice at a time. Emma learned that not all scars fade just because the bleeding stopped. Sometimes the healing comes later in how you choose to speak to people who once called you selfish, bitter, or broken. The phone that wouldn't stop ringing after Thanksgiving, the messages started pouring in. Cousin Riley, Aunt Jenna, even Uncle Mark from Oregon, people who hadn't called in years. Some were supportive. "Emma, I had no idea what you went through. I'm sorry I never reached out." Some were defensive. "Why dig all this up now? We were just trying to keep the peace." Some were guilt-ridden. "Margaret always said you distanced yourself. I never questioned it. That was my mistake." Emma didn't expect applause, but she also didn't expect the exhaustion that came with being the truth-bearer. "I feel like I've been cast as the family whistleblower," she told Lily one night over tea. Maybe Lily said, "But it takes one voice to break the echo chamber." The invitation she didn't expect it came via email from cousin Ava, once Margaret's loyal mouthpiece, now planning her daughter's high school graduation party. "Hey Emma, I know things have been tense, but I'd really like for you and Lily to come. I want our kids to know each other, not just the edited family version we were handed. I hope that's okay." Emma stared at the screen for a long time. She wasn't sure if it was forgiveness or guilt that prompted the invite. But the intent was clear, a chance to shift the dynamic for the next generation. Not about cake or balloons. The party was at a community hall just outside town. Streamers, folding chairs, a homemade slideshow playing on loop. Emma didn't go to be seen. She went to see, to observe the version of her family that existed beyond Margaret's narrative. And it was different. People approached her hesitantly, like she was both familiar and foreign. "Emma, you look great. I heard about what happened. I'm sorry, really. I used to think Lily was just the result of a mistake. But wow, that girl's a powerhouse." Emma smiled, nodded, accepted what felt genuine, and let the rest pass without defense. She wasn't there to settle scores. She was there to start fresh. A toast without bitterness. When Ava raised her glass to thank guests, she paused and looked at Emma. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight, and especially Emma and Lily for showing us what strength and truth look like in a family." There was silence, then slow, uncertain applause. Emma didn't blush. She didn't duck her head. She simply raised her glass in return, not to say "I told you so," but to say "I'm still here." The quiet redemption of presence. Over the next few weeks, Emma noticed subtle changes. More relatives started following her on social media. Ethan added her to the group chat where family plans were shared. Claire's mother texted her articles about parenting. And shockingly, Margaret began arriving early to Sunday dinners. Not to cook, not to lead, just to sit to listen. She still didn't say much. But sometimes silence when intentional is a peace offering. The next generation takes notes. Lily watched all of it. Quietly, like someone studying the anatomy of a slow revolution. One day, while helping her cousin Ava's daughter prepare college applications, she turned to Emma and said, "You know what's crazy? These kids never knew the divide existed." Emma raised an eyebrow. "Until the truth came out, they thought we were just the relatives from another town." She smiled. "That means the past doesn't have to be their burden." A letter Emma wrote, but didn't send. In the middle of a slow afternoon, Emma sat at her desk and began to write. Not an email, not a legal document, just a letter. "Dear Mom, I don't know if you'll ever say the words I needed when I was 17, or 20, or even now, but I've come to understand something. Waiting for someone to apologize is like waiting for spring in the middle of winter. It keeps you frozen. So I'm choosing to thaw. Not because I forget. Not because I excuse. But because I want to move forward without dragging the past like a weight behind me. I won't pretend we're healed. But I see you trying, and I'm meeting you halfway. Because I want Lily to see that strength isn't loud. Sometimes it's just choosing peace when you finally have the power not to. Emma." She folded the letter, slipped it into a drawer. Sometimes the writing is more important than the sending. A family, finally in full color. That Sunday, Emma stood in the kitchen with Ethan, Claire, Margaret, and Lily, each preparing a dish. Nothing extravagant. Just a simple meal with extra chairs pulled up to the table. Jackson toddled in with a wooden spoon. Claire laughed. Ethan dropped a glass. Margaret muttered something about too many cooks, and Emma rolled her eyes. It wasn't picture perfect. It was better. It was real. And for the first time, the story wasn't just hers to survive. It was hers to shape. Some legacies are spoken. Others are lived quietly, defiantly, and without asking for approval. Emma used to believe her life would always be defined by what she lost: a voice in her own family, the right to belong, the dignity of being seen without condition. But as she stood by the window that morning watching Lily zip up her coat for her first law internship interview, Emma realized something. Her silence had never been weakness. It had been survival, and now it was transformation. The interview that meant more than a job. Lily looked sharp: blazer, crisp hair, pulled back notes tucked neatly in her bag. "You ready?" Emma asked. Lily nodded, but her voice wavered, a little scared. Emma smiled. "Good. That means you're about to do something important." Before she left, Lily turned back and said, "You know, Mom, I used to think our story was broken, like a family that didn't get finished." Emma tilted her head. "And now?" Lily's eyes gleamed. "Now I think we're just writing a different ending." Emma's voice, finally heard. That same week, Emma was invited to speak at a local women's center about resilience, motherhood, and reclaiming your story. She hesitated. Not because she lacked something to say, but because for so long she was told her story was shameful, inappropriate, inconvenient. But then she thought of all the other women like her who were erased by the people closest to them. So she stood before a modest room of 30 people, most of them strangers, and began. "I was 19 when I became a mother, but I was much older when I became my own advocate." The applause, that wasn't about pity. When she finished, no one clapped out of politeness. They clapped because they saw themselves in her quiet dignity. Her fire, her refusal to vanish. And afterward, a woman in her 60s approached her. "I waited 40 years to tell my truth," she said. "You just helped me start." Emma held her hand. No one's ever too late to begin. A visit to the cemetery and the unspoken words. That Sunday, Emma drove to the cemetery where her father was buried. She hadn't been there in years. She brought 2 things: a folded letter she never sent to her mother and a tiny photo of Lily at her law school orientation. She knelt, placed them both beside the stone. "Dad," she whispered, "I kept the house. But more than that, I kept your intention alive." A breeze rustled the trees. Emma closed her eyes. "I gave Lily the future you wanted for me, and she's going to build even more." She didn't cry. She didn't need to. This wasn't grief. It was gratitude. The final conversation with Margaret weeks later, Margaret invited Emma for tea. No lawyers, no tension, just 2 women who shared blood but lived very different truths. They sat on the porch. Margaret poured tea into mismatched china cups. "I watched your talk," she said suddenly. Emma blinked. "You did?" Margaret nodded. "I didn't agree with all of it, but I understood it for the first time." Emma sipped in silence, letting that land. Margaret set down her cup. "I won't ask for forgiveness. I don't expect it, but I do hope we can keep moving forward." Emma didn't say yes or no. She just said, "I'm not walking backward." Margaret nodded. It was enough. What legacy really means. That summer, Emma received a package in the mail. It was from Lily. Inside was a framed quote. "We are not the stories they told about us. We are the ones who choose how it ends." Emma placed it above her writing desk. Beside it, she put a photo of her and Lily arms linked, laughing uncontrollably on a bench outside the courthouse where Lily would soon clerk. A legacy, she realized, wasn't something passed down. It was something rewritten on your terms. And so, the final scene one afternoon, as Emma hosted a small dinner for Ethan Claire Jackson and a few neighbors, Lily stood up to make a toast. "I just want to say thank you," she began, raising her glass. "Not just to my mom, but to everyone here who helped rewrite what family means to me." She turned to Emma. "You didn't just raise me, Mom. You showed me how to rise." Emma's heart swelled, and for the first time in a long, long time, she didn't feel like the girl who'd been erased. She felt like the woman who rebuilt everything from the silence.